Thanks so much, Meg. Thanks for inviting us to join you today. Hey, Wasim.
Hey, Cindy, I see you're still on the island.
I'm still on the island. They haven't kicked me off yet. I'm not going anywhere. Anyway,
Great. Well, it's nice to be here with you. So what is how did you end up in crypto?
oh, well, interesting. It was because of Twitter. Mark Andreessen in 2010 was tweeting a lot about Bitcoin at the time, and we both followed each other on Twitter before he took a hiatus. And I was following him and what he was doing with that, but it was still a little too early. It wasn't quite mainstream. It was still a lot of I think on the dev side. And then about 2017, I started noticing more activity. 2015, I actually, noticed some activity then too. And I thought it was interesting, curious enough to research Bitcoin a little bit more. And then in 2017, I saw the explosion of activity and whatnot. And I thought, oh gosh, I better spend time researching what's going on in this world because it's really new and it's very interesting and how people are looking at a possible new economy and a new technology. And I took a couple of years. I co-founded Women on the Block with two other female leaders. That's how you and I met at Women on the Block. And it was a conference during Blockchain Week in New York City in May in 2018. And we had all female speakers for 54 speakers for the event that occurred on Mother's Day, actually. So that was an amazing time and busy. We also took the conference to Singapore to talk about blockchain and regulations and cryptocurrencies and everything across the board, mostly on blockchain though. But it was really fun exploration into it and really got, really dove in, especially on the regulatory side, thinking about, financial inclusion in that way. And Wasim, how about you? How did you get started?
Well, so I was actually at a cryptographic company in the end of the 2010s, 2011, etc. And so I ended up leaving that company and joining a company called Alpha Point, which in 2012 was one of the first companies to build crypto exchanges and sell that software to people who wanted to set up exchanges. Setting up exchanges was completely illegal, and so that the only customers were in like Norway and the Caribbean and various places. Today, Alpha Point is the de facto standard in exchange software. So I did that. I moved to New York, took a break from crypto, joined a digital publishing company that some of you may have heard of called Rebel Mouse. And then I came back into crypto when some of my original founders asked me to look at what they were doing. And yes, I met you at a breakfast, and we hit it off based on our love of space. And then I was one of 6 guys who went to Women on the Block, which was a truly amazing conference. And I wish it was still going. But my sort of re-entry into the crypto world started with those 300 women, and those are the people that I follow and have educated me on kind of what's happened in the last 10 years on crypto. So it's amazing that we're all here together. So
That I want to know because you're talking about the women who you follow. Who are those women that you follow in the crypto world?
So I mean, it starts. We were going to cover that a little later, but people like Tessie Moraine, Jay Harrell,
Mhm.
Beryl Lee, Laura Shen. So
Yes, Laura.
when you, for those of you that are new to cryptography, I'm sorry, new to crypto, when you talk to other people about crypto and what podcasts to listen to, pretty much everyone will tell you Laura Shin's Unchained, Camilla Russo's Defiant podcast. These are the 2 gold standards in learning about crypto. Perianne Boring from the Chamber of Commerce, Hester Peirce, Commissioner of the SEC, Alexis Johnson, Valerie Stepanek, and Cindy Chen.
Oh, thanks. You're really sweet. Yeah, a lot of them have come, except for Laura. We weren't able to get Laura to come to the conference, but certainly a lot of them that you just named were at our conference, and a couple of them even won awards at the Women of Block, which Microsoft graciously was the sponsor for on the Women of Block Awards. But I know you wanted to talk about something. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'll let you name some
Some
amazing
other ones.
crypto people a little later.
Yeah.
But let's since some of the audience are maybe new to crypto, so let's give them a quick lightning round of what is crypto and Bitcoin, what is cryptocurrency and Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency is it's an asset. I guess you can call it an asset slash commodity, depending on who you're speaking to, based on these blockchain protocols that are out there. I don't know how many there are in the list. Maybe you know better, working with Vault 12. How many does Coinbase have? They're everything else other than Bitcoin. So that would be Ethereum, it'd be NEM, it would be, Lumens or anything. Yeah, go ahead.
My current favorite, AMP.
AMP? I don't even know what AMP is. You have to explain what AMP is. But they're all out there. And it's a way for people to exchange value, on the blockchains. That's how I think of cryptocurrency. So in that. And of course, when there is a transaction that occurs, right, and these transactions can occur in fractional portions, like with Bitcoin, instead of one big one, you can have a portion of that. That's really amazing and transformative. What do you think?
So I think it's very interesting that, I don't really use cash, apart from giving it to people that I meet on the subway. Cash is not something that's part of my life. And so everything that I do is on credit cards. Actually, it's on the phone, or it's, buying something on Amazon. So, money for me is already digital. And so Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is another form of digital money. But unlike fiat currency, which is the name given to what we would call cash, the US dollar, British pound, etc., it's not controlled by a government or a set of financial institutions. It's actually controlled by millions of people around the world who run something called the blockchain, which is the second thing that we're gonna define. And so there's no one person in charge of it. And so a government can't just say, oh, we're going to shut down the banks and you lost your deposit. And so that's why people are so excited about it. And when the pandemic came last year, we saw that you couldn't really rely on a bank, going into a physical bank and getting cash, even getting cash from ATMs. You kind of needed to work on the electronic side because that was a better, safer way to go. So Bitcoin, native currency of the internet. Now, I also think of it as an application on top of the blockchain, and the blockchain is the thing that enables things like cryptocurrency. And we're going to talk about a few other types of things that exist in this world of cryptocurrency. And they all rely on the blockchain. So the blockchain is basically a ledger. So it's a record of every transaction that happens. And it's a record that anyone can look at. You can literally go right now to Etherscan and see who's posting what. And it's a record that is anonymous, but it's also a record that cannot be changed. And that is the kind of the fundamental role of the blockchain, is to create this record that's spread all around the world. Copies of it are spread all around the world, so no one can change it and people can track what's going on. And then the other thing that I'm going to put in there is, so if you think of the ledger as a database, there's also a programming model on top of that called smart contracts. And this was created by the people that created Ethereum, which is the second most well-known cryptocurrency. And this ability to program and run these programs on the world computer, the opportunities are spectacular for that. So I'm going to leave the hard one for you. What is a non-fungible token? NFT. What is an NFT?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. From what I've observed, especially of late, and if you hang out in Clubhouse, you're going to learn a lot of things, and plugging another platform. But the NFT world, the non-fungible token started a few years ago, actually, when people were trying to define it. There was a lot of discussion. Maybe you know some of the more detailed, some of the discussions that were happening on NFTs. You want to talk about that in the last couple of years? Because currently, right now, most people are thinking about it in terms of artists, right, or music, or a way
Right.
for that. But let's talk about the history of it first. And I think you have a slightly better expert knowledge about it than me.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think, the world has been heading to more and more digital things, right? Now we see it in publishing, we see it now, well, with the internet, and then here we go, we've got money on the internet, which is Bitcoin. And so people have been trying to figure out, well, how can you have physical things or things that aren't electronic, weren't created, for the internet necessarily? How could you have those on the internet? And then how could you trade them? How could you sell them to someone else, and not have to do the kind of the face-to-face type transactions that are typical in the traditional world? And so I think this idea of, just to define NFT for everyone. So a US dollar, if I have a dollar and you have a dollar, they're the same. There's no difference between them. I can give you my dollar and you can give me yours, and it'll be the same. It'll have the same value. It'll function exactly the same way. But so that's called a fungible token.
Yep.
But when you have something that is unique, so even though I have one of it and you have one of it, but they're different, they could have vastly different values. And so an example of that is a diamond. Two different diamonds are going to have different values.
Art, right?
Art, music, video.
Music. A manuscript that was written, and it's one of a kind, by an author, that's also possible. Anything of value that we would think is a rare item, like that recording that maybe like Prince did, years ago. It was never released. That could be created and considered put into a non-fungible token or NFT, right?
Right. And so this is a whole area that, especially this year, has had a lot of media attention, and people are getting very, very excited.
It's exploding.
Absolutely. And so let's spend a few minutes on this, because it illustrates why people get so excited about cryptocurrency and blockchain and NFTs. NFTs enable artists to sell their work on the internet and not worry about it just being copied and not being recompensed for that. And so all of a sudden, not only can you sell art and music online, you can actually sell it in a way that's not possible in the traditional world. And so an example of that is, you could create a painting, a piece of digital art, and register it on the blockchain. And when you register it, you get the NFT. So the NFT isn't the art. The NFT is the record of the art. It's the receipt. And it says, this person created it on this date and they own it. But you can do some other things. You can program it, and you can say, whenever this piece of art is sold to the next person, and then the next person, you get 10% of the sale price. So imagine what that does to the creator economy of artists. And this is enabled through smart contracts. So now everything kind of connects. You pay for it with cryptocurrency. It's registered on the blockchain, so you can track what happens to it. And there's a very different monetization model, which gives you a recurring stream of money. The only thing that I can think of that's the same is, if you write a song, you get royalties. So this is like, what if you could have royalties for something that you created, right, and people purchased? Amazing.
I've seen it with digital art. A friend of mine from the Mercedes-Benz EQ community actually is a digital artist, and he makes these little characters that look like little Minecraft, Nintendo, things. It's on his website and whatnot. And he's been doing that, and he's been selling them for very little. It seems very little, because the numbers, of course, are in decimal points when you're talking in cryptocurrencies and not necessarily full numbers, right? They're fractionals. And I've seen his digital art be sold once in an auction on the platform was OpenSea at the time, and on a platform, and then that little thing is resold a second time. You can make an offer in an auction similarly, and it's really amazing to see how fast and quick people are responding to these very early adopters and using these new platforms. And that's what a lot of the discussion that you're seeing right now. I think one of the first NFT art, I think, from Beeple recently, right, was sold. I believe it was Sotheby's that sold it, I think. And it was
9.3 million.
$69.3 million. Most of them, are they most transactions in Ethereum? I think I've seen Ethereum. I haven't seen any other currencies at the cryptos.
Mainly Ethereum, but it could be other things.
Right. So that's excitement.
Let's wrap up our kind of intro to crypto world with what is crypto used for. So I can think of three distinct buckets. So the first is buying it for investment purposes.
Yep, value.
So value, and if people are considering this is probably the most important one. Buy a little bit, buy it regularly, just do it. The second one that you hear about, that the media often reports about, is you can use it to buy ice cream and pizza and things like that. I think we're a long way off from that world. Right. I'm not going to buy ice cream with Bitcoin. I'm going to keep it.
Right. The $63,000 pizza, you mean that?
Yeah. Well, you don't have to spend $63,000, but it might be worth whatever you spend, whatever fraction you spend might be worth $63,000 one day.
Later.
Reddit. So there's those two sort of scenarios that you sort of hear about a lot. But the third use of it is people have created platforms to do various things. And so often the cryptocurrency is used to access those services. So for instance, Vault 12 has a platform that helps you protect your cryptocurrency by enabling you to create a digital vault. And so to pay for that vault and have the subscription, have the vault for a year, you use a very particular cryptocurrency that we created called VGT, Vault Guardian Token, and that's used to pay for your subscription. So that's kind of the third usage. And I think as we start to see more applications that are less to do with trading and those kinds of things, and that are more normal applications that you or I might use, we'll start to see more of these tokens being used. So that seems to be the third area. And then of course there's NFTs. And I'm sure there'll be other applications that people create on the blockchain.
Of course. It looks like we have a question in the chat. You want to take the time to address that? Where can they learn additional training classes on cryptocurrencies? I think the number one place that I learned a lot from was Laura Shin's Unchained podcast. I think that in itself was a few years ago is definitely very useful in learning more information and getting that. Other places that I've learned about, there's a couple of books. I know you love Bitcoin Billionaires, I think, about the Winklevoss twins from Gemini. That was very helpful in understanding how Bitcoin kind of generated, the generation of that and created. Satoshi's white paper is really, really important, I think, in order to understand that, if you can read.
A couple of other.
What else are things?
Yeah, so I would have a look at coinbase.com/learn. So they have a site that literally is like the very beginning basics of cryptocurrency. And then Gemini also has a similar site called Cryptopedia, and that goes into a little more detail. So it's a little more wide-ranging and has more detailed articles that have been written by many, many industry experts. So I definitely recommend you look at Gemini as well. And then when you're ready to look at security and think about security, because there's all kinds of implications, you have to worry about your passwords and how you access your cryptocurrency in this world. if you want to learn about security in crypto, go to securemycrypto.org. This is a site that my team created, and it talks about everything, but it specifically talks about security.
And one last one as well is the the Chamber of Digital Commerce with Perry Ann Boring and Amy Devine Kim. And with that, I've emceed their summit twice. Their blockchain, I've seen their blockchain summit. But I think with that said, they have a lot of information and when regulations and what's happening with law in cryptocurrencies as well as with blockchain. So, you know, the Chamber of Digital Commerce, I think, is also a really good source to learn information from.
So let's switch gears and talk about inclusion.
Yes,
financial inclusion.
That's why we're all here.
Which is what the subject of the summit is. Mm-hmm. So many people, especially if you look at crypto Twitter or you read a lot of the articles that show up, crypto is identified with guys. And, you know, they apart from talking about themselves, they talk about, you know, the ideas that this decentralization that happens where no one person controls anything, what the power of crypto to democratize the economy. So do you want to share your thoughts on that?
Sure. I think, you know, because we were so early in the ecosystem a few years ago, it really was, you know, the community was really proactive in making sure that there was a lot of diversity and inclusion. That's the push for it in the community and working groups for the protocols. I think some of the conferences were in the beginning were very one-sided, as you mentioned, and that's why Women on the Block addressed that as a concern in that, and saying that we can't have another technology frontier that's only, you know, men that are driving the conversations and development on that. You need to have more diversity on that. So that was pushing that in. The inclusion is, you know, like I said, there are a couple of people that you've named. Some of the people that I think also to watch and women in the space, Amber Balde, I think is fantastic, and you know, follow her Twitter. Her Twitter has been wonderful. There's also there's a there's another Leah, I forget her last name. Do you know who I'm talking about? She's a writer for CoinDesk. You know, she's out there talking about financial inclusion in crypto and blockchain as well. If I remember, I'll write that in the chat. There's also Liz Land over at Murphy McGonigal, who used to be a CFTC investigator, and now she went over and now she's helping on the regulatory side with blockchain, and her firm has been doing a lot of good work. You know, Caitlin Long, who's been pushing along, my gosh, Caitlin, pushing along the legislation side, especially in the regulatory compliance and working with the SEC and the CFTC and other regulatory bodies in order to push legislation forward. Wyoming seems to be leading in that, where she's based at. So, you know, they've done a lot of heavy lifting out there, and these are real leaders that I follow and look to move that. And Valerie, I always forget how you say your last name.
Panic.
Thank you, Savanic, who was formerly at the SEC too. You know, so there's a lot of women, there's a lot of people of color in the space. There's a lot of community buildings and communities that are happening. There's a lot of activity. So, you know, it's a very fascinating time in doing that and in really following along and you know, getting involved.
Yeah, so I think the message, you know, from us, you know, given what we've seen is very much, yes, crypto Twitter might be a bunch of guys, and it might also be a bunch of white guys shouting at how terrible cryptocurrency is, which is what we got from Bill Maher on Friday, and Warren Buffett as well this week. But, you know, lift up the cover, because the people who are working on crypto and pushing it forward, many of them are women. And that was like the big aha when I went to the Women on the Block conference, that that there were women of all, of all levels of expertise who had spent years working in the different agencies or the different aspects of financial services. And now they were the ones that were carrying the flag forward for cryptocurrency. So I want to bring up another aspect of inclusion, which does not get covered in the media. And it's very, very important, I think. And it speaks more to how cryptocurrency, can democratize access to financial services. So one of the things that we've seen in this trajectory from, cryptocurrency, buying Bitcoin, buying Ethereum, buying, any one of these 2,500 cryptocurrencies, last summer, everyone started talking about DeFi. And DeFi is an acronym for decentralized finance. And what this is a bunch of developers started building applications that mirrored applications that exist in the traditional finance world. So loans, paying, people have the ability to get a loan. Other people have the ability to deposit money and get interest on their money and earn interest. So they replicated all of these financial services things that exist in the real world, or in the traditional world rather, but did it on the blockchain. What this means for inclusion is that no longer will you be denied a loan if you're Black. There's no scenario that matches redlining, which has, tremendously affected certain underserved communities, especially in this country. So these things, which are, bunches of smart contracts running, open up financial services to everyone. And like you said at the beginning, you don't need to do things with a whole Ethereum or a whole Bitcoin. You do it in fractions. So if you only have $20 to buy Ethereum with every month, that's perfectly fine. It's still gonna, increase in value. So I think this is one of the most powerful areas. And then the other area, I guess, just for completeness, is a lot of people will talk about the unbanked. And this is something that the media does write about a lot. And you'll hear this word unbanked, which really speaks to the fact that there's many, many people around the world who don't use traditional bank accounts and do things, in a different way. And so crypto becomes a way to exchange money, buy goods, all of those things.
Right. And especially, in countries that do have instability, right, with their currencies, like Venezuela and other countries as well, they'll use cryptocurrencies as a form of transaction on, like, on funds, and it's a little bit more stable than perhaps their local currency. I think we're running out of time because I see Meg has come back, and
I'm so sorry to interrupt. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I didn't want to interrupt because it's literally I'm having to tear myself away from it as well. So
we could go on and on and on.
Thank you both. Yeah, I am sorry to have to interrupt, but I want to say a huge thank you to both Cindy and Wasim for sharing this conversation with us. It's been very illuminating for me, so thank you so much for that. Can we get a round of applause for this amazing speaker group?